Good morning and welcome to the Adult Education and Workforce Development Statewide webinar for October 13th, 2021. I am Jerry Hafner and joining me is the Adult Education team and special guests this morning. Let's begin this morning with a success story as we do in each of our webinars. This one is about Julie and an amazing program volunteer. Julie wrote, "Without this program, people in our community will continue to struggle." I started school at Eastport Elementary School in Michigan City. That's where I met my fairy godmother. Her name is Mrs. Sloan, and she is my anchor. No matter what I'm going through, she is always there. After Eastport, I went to 4 different schools. I got tired of moving, so I quit going to school. I made a promise to myself and to Mrs. Sloan that I would eventually get my HSC. I met my husband when I was 17 years old. We have 2 beautiful children who are 13 and 10 years old. My husband and I dated for 18 years before we got married. We wanted to have a better life for our kids than we had, and that is exactly what we did. We bought a home, we currently have 2 cars, and we have kept moving forward. The only thing that was missing was us attaining our HSC. Our journey to get our HSC began in 2019. My husband passed his test on the very first try, and that was great. I passed everything but math. I tried to pass but failed 5 times. I was going nowhere fast. However, when I failed to pass, it made me want to pass even more. Giving up wasn't an option. I made a promise to Mrs. Sloan and myself, and I intended to keep that promise no matter how long it took. A.K. Smith in Michigan City got a volunteer tutor who started coming regularly. She worked for the public library, but since it was closed to the public due to COVID-19, she didn't have any work there, so she decided to volunteer at A.K. Smith Career. She made the time to tutor and gave me a lot of one-on-one instruction. Time after time, I've watched her make time for me and my busy schedule, and for a lot of other students as well. We studied math day and night with her. She is absolutely amazing. And here's the kicker. She did all this for me because she wanted me to succeed and didn't get paid a dime. Because of her, I now have my HSC. We need a program like this, and this program needs to expand to help others attain the HSC. And there's a picture of Julie along with our Director of Adult Education in Michigan City, Fred Green. So congratulations, Julie, and congratulations, Fred, with your program and having an amazing volunteer who helped Julie.
It'll say speakers.
Let's move on to some other news here. Bart Doan is unable to be with us this morning, so here's his report. The statewide Career Development Conference will be held in person on March 18th, 2022 at the Ivy Tech Corporate College and Culinary Center at 2820 Meridian Street here in Indianapolis. And the Regional Career Development Conference is being planned as well. Please reach out either to your local JAG manager or Bart Doan. His email address is on your screen if you're interested in judging or supporting a regional CDC in your area. At Manchester, a JAG student and 2021 state public speaking winner held a live session with students at JA Job Spark. More than 120 students attended statewide, and they were there for her session to ask her questions and get advice. And finally, the annual Youth Adult Services Summit will take place October 29th. It will be held virtually again. There will be a wide range of topics, including bringing back the popular student panel. And please reach out to any Youth Initiatives team member if you're interested in attending. The event will run from 9 a.m. to 3:20 p.m. Well, good morning, Adam. We have the HiSET team here this morning with updates. And Adam, I understand that you're going to talk a little bit about accommodations. So welcome, Adam, and HiSET.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Glad to be back. What a great story, Jerry. I worked as a math specialist for many years and still do. I do workshops on math readiness, and math and the writing portion always have a contest each year to see who's the hardest for students to pass. But that story really outlines the psychological 8-ball that young woman had to get out from behind, and the help that she got from that program is really commendable. I'm very proud to be here with you and the educators of Indiana. It's another great example of why your programs are so successful. Really inspiring. That really struck me personally. So thank you for that. And everyone else, hello and welcome. What we're going to do this morning is each month that I'm invited to attend, please, I invite you to submit questions or topics that you would like me to focus on to Megan and Jerry, and I will do my best to answer them. So it was suggested to me that we would like to focus on HiSET testing accommodations. So we're going to do a review for some of you, but certainly it's always good to go over what is the approval process, what are some commonly approved accommodations, and what are the accommodations policies and guideline links. And I've provided Megan with a PDF of all of these slides. So if you'd like a copy, because there's resources embedded in all of them, if you'd like a copy of it, please ask Megan. So this slide is created to really give you the overview, and it goes from left to right, and it really contains all of the information you'll need, although I'm going to break it down in a couple of more slides. But as I was also a special ed director in one of the districts I worked in, and my trainer told me, he said, we're all special needs, we just don't all have IEPs. And in adult ed, we often get students, as you all know, who either had IEPs or didn't, or we don't know, or they're missing, or it was so long ago, documentation, or they've had lifestyle changes that have affected their cognitive abilities, either through stress and trauma, or drug addiction or health issues. But there are a plethora of reasons why you as an educator might suspect or know that a student needs an accommodation. And we at HiSET support you in that. One of the things that I was amazed at when I first got in, became aware of HiSET and ETS is that all accommodations are provided at no additional cost to either test taker or test center. So we encourage you that if you suspect the student needs an accommodation, there's a couple of quick steps you can take. The first one, it's on the left, is review the HiSET test taker bulletin and website, and I provide the link for you at the bottom of the slide. And then if you've reviewed that, reach out to Disability Services, and some of you have been in my webinars before, know that I'm a big fan of the HiSET program manual. I'm at my office right now, my copy sits right here on my desk, and chapter 1 of the HiSET program manual provides you with all the contact information for Disability Services, as well as TAS and other tech support, things like that. So review the test taker bulletin, and then if you think there's a reason, even if you're just not sure, my student has got this issue, you just want to talk to someone about it, reach out to Disability Services, and they will work with you to determine the need for accommodations. Now, another link that is useful before you contact them is the requirements, the disabilities requirements link, and I provide that for you there. So review those two documents, contact Disability Services, that's the first step. The second step is that after they've worked with you, Disability Services will work one-to-one with you on a case-by-case basis to determine if an evaluation should be made. If you all agree that should be the case, then you'll complete, the next step is to complete the HiSET testing accommodations request form and to gather supporting documentation. Now, I'm going to give you, there's a slide that shows you the request form. It's very straightforward. It's very easy to fill out. And then gathering the supporting documentation, I'm going to provide you a link with tips and strategies on how to do that. ETS understands, the HiSET understands, that documentation may be spotty or missing or may have never existed at all. And we will work with you to create adequate documentation to support your claim. Sometimes when documentation has either never existed or is just unrecoverable, disability services will work directly with you to create it. We do teacher testimonies, and administrator testimonies are also acceptable. So complete that form, gather the documentation, and then you go to the third step, submit the completed request to ETS. Now, I put this in the middle of the page because it's paramount. Applicants are encouraged to apply early. Now, there is a guideline 4 to 6 weeks before testing. You know, the worst situation for all of us, for the test taker, for you as test administrators, and for us at ETS or at HiSET, is to have someone need immediate assistance, like on the day of the test, some disability. That's not a situation we want to be in. We want to be well prepared. And applicants are encouraged, you can never apply too early. 4 to 6 weeks is recommended. In my personal experience, as soon as you become aware that an accommodation might be necessary, that's the time to apply, because if supporting documentation needs to be either revisited, created, or tracked down, you want to have adequate time for not only for that documentation to be provided, but then for the accommodation to be put in place. Some accommodations, you know, require setup. We did an accommodation for a visually impaired student where they had the test read to them. That required quite a bit of preparation at no additional cost to the test taker or the student. Some accommodations, like larger print and things like that, are much easier. So you want to submit early as you possibly can. Once that application has been submitted and approved, the applicants will receive a testing accommodations letter with registration instructions. This is another great service. At the point that the accommodation is approved, disability services will then handle all of the registrations on a personal case-by-case basis for the test taker at no additional cost. They'll contact the testing center, make sure the accommodation is in place, contact the test center, find out what support disability services needs to provide it, whether it's a physical documentation or adding to whatever the accommodation is. They'll also contact the test taker, schedule the testing with them. If there's changes or things come up, they handle all of those changes. And that ETS will coordinate with the appropriate test center on behalf of the test taker. Slide. So I get asked often, and you may be asking this question right now, if we remember, well, what is covered and what isn't? So I want to repeat, it's on a case-by-case basis. There is no boilerplate. However, I did create this graph that lists the most commonly approved PBT, that's paper-based testing, and CBT, computer-based testing accommodations. And for both of the tests, the most commonly approved accommodation is extended time, which of course for those of, and then you are all a very experienced group, so I'm sure that's very familiar with you. But other accommodations are separate room, audio cassette or other form of recorded audio, large print, screen magnification, scribe or keyboard entry aid, additional supervised break time, sign language interpreted instructions for deaf or hard of hearing test takers, braille, refreshable braille, reader and screen reader, and these are the top 10. There are many more. And keep in mind that the accommodations are provided for a variety of reasons. This is by no means meant to be the prescriptive list. It's just the common ones are attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, psychological or psychiatric disorders, learning or other cognitive disabilities, physical disorders, chronic health disabilities, intellectual disabilities, hearing and visual impairments. So use this as a template to guide you. But your intuition is going to be your best guide. If you feel that a student might need an accommodation, contact disability services. Well, read that guidebook, read those 2 links, and then if you still have questions about it, contact disability services. Next slide, please. So registration for testing accommodations. Most registrations of the testing accommodations must schedule or change their appointments through ETS Disability Services. Now, this is a very important thing to keep track of, especially during the week of testing or on day of testing. People tend to forget. If you contact test taker services, if the test taker contacts test taker services, or if they contact you, both of you will, at both avenues, you will discover that disability services has control over that scheduling and will have to change that appointment for the test taker. So once an accommodation has been approved, all changes and all modifications to the schedule or changes to the accommodations must go through ETS Disability Services. Test takers with accommodations cannot register through their online accounts or through a test center. And so they must schedule these test takers, and I provide the number for you here. But if you didn't have it, where could you find it? That's right, Adam. Page 1, Chapter 1 of the HISET Program Manual, which, as you suggested, I printed out a copy and I have right here on my desk like you do. There you go, folks. It's also available on our website. There's the number 1-855-802-2748, and Monday through Friday, Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 to 5 p.m. And then this ETS Disability Services will coordinate directly with the test center to schedule test takers with accommodations. Slide. Some accommodations do not require prior approval. That's why, if you're when in doubt, contact Disability Services. So for example, and this is again not the complete list, so you want to contact Disability Services to find out if accommodation needs special approval. But some examples, most common accommodations that do not require prior approval are large print 14-point test booklets. You can simply order those from TAS, Test Administration Services, and they'll be provided to you. Scratch paper, wheelchair access, things that the test taker can provide for themselves, colored overlays, especially for vision impaired, a straight edge, again for vision impaired or tracking issues, or magnifying glass without memory. Again, if you have a doubt, contact Disability Services. Next slide, please. This is a copy of the accommodations request form. Those of you that have been with me a few times know that if you look at the title in orange, that's always a Google searchable phrase that I put in there. So you can search HISET Testing Accommodations Request Form, and it'll take you to this link, or you can use the link that I provided for you at the bottom of the page. And as you can see, it's not complicated. There's no trick or difficult to answer questions. Very straightforward, last name, first name, and contact information. Next slide, please. And again, to reiterate, I provided those two links on the overall page, the flow chart page, but again here, accommodations policies, and again, you could Google HISET accommodations policies and guidelines, but accommodation policies, you can learn more about accommodations for HISET test takers with disabilities or health-related needs at that link, or the documentation guidelines. We get a lot of questions about documentations, and you can learn more about that documentation criteria for specific disabilities. Jerry, my last slide has contact information, but at this point I want to open it up and see if we have any questions. I welcome this opportunity to share with you and your team, and let's see what we have.
I do have some questions. Okay, Adam, what does calculator neutral mean?
Okay, so that's an off-the-slide question, but I will take it. Bring it, baby. So that is from the math section of the HISET. One of the descriptors of the math section is that it is calculator neutral. What that means is that none of the computations require a calculator. All of them can be done with simple, basic pencil and paper calculations. Really, your base 10, multiplication chart. And we all know that the 7s and the 8s give the most problem with memorization. It's that central part of that chart that gives people the most trouble. So calculator neutral is something that I do this in my math workshop. I do a whole hour workshop on reducing tension and anxiety over the math test specifically. And one of the anxieties that students feel is, how am I going to figure this out? So if you remind students that it's calculator neutral, what that means is that there are no calculations that absolutely require a calculator. However, they are welcome to use it. Now, rubber meets the road, folks. Truthfully, most people, myself included, if I have a calculator, I use it to back up my calculations anyway, balancing checkbooks, things like that. So that's what calculator neutral means. It means that the test is designed to not require the use of a calculator. Keep in mind, if it's a paper-based test, the test center must provide the calculator. And Jerry and Megan can talk about Indiana requirements, but HISET's requirements is that the calculator cannot have a memory function, And my big joke is any student who knows how to program a calculator and save a formula to the memory doesn't need to cheat with it either, because they've memorized it anyway. And on the computer-based test, although test centers can provide calculators if they choose to, there is an embedded calculator on the help tab. It's on the upper right-hand corner when you're in the math subtest. It says CALC calculator. Click on it, and if you want practice with that calculator, any of the Microsoft Word provided embedded calculators that's the model that we used. Other questions? Thank you for that.
I have one more calculator question, and then I've got accommodations questions. All right, so we have basic scientific calculators for the use of testing in the classroom. If a student asks and prefers a simple calculator, are we able to provide that, or should all students be using the same calculator?
So that is really a question for Jerry and Megan. I will tell you, ETS's policy is that it cannot have a memory function. Most sites use either simple four function or scientific calculator. I will tell you, and I'm going to defer to Jerry and Megan, but I will tell you that the states, all the states that I work in, want equity of opportunity for students. So most states, in fact, every state sets a statewide policy, not because one is better than the other, but so that there can be no perception of, because, you know, if you had a simple four function calculator and one student had that and the other student had a scientific calculator, there could be the perception of advantage, which we know doesn't exist, but as we also know, perceptions are something we deal with. So Megan or Jerry, do you want to tackle that for the state of Indiana?
Megan.
Megan, I'm sorry. I keep saying Megan. I've got a glitch. Megan, I apologize.
It's all right, Adam. I know it's nerves. Good morning. I would say, as far as that goes, we don't really, I mean, you can have the option if the student wants to use a four function calculator, they can use a four function calculator. If they want to use a scientific calculator, they can use a scientific calculator. On the computer based test though, there is already a four function calculator built in. So if they want to use that, they have that option. If they need or want a scientific calculator for the computer-based test, then one will have to be provided. So it kind of depends on how the student feels or what the student bases the best option for them. Some people prefer one over the other, especially if they have an IEP. Sometimes an IEP in the past in the school system will say they need to have a scientific calculator. So it depends on what the student feels is best for them.
Cool.
Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Here we go, Adam. Here are the accommodation questions. If the testing center will be responsible for completing the HiSET application, will the testing center also get the accommodation letter?
So technically, it's the student, the test taker, that makes the application. The test taker assists the student in the completion of it. Once the test taker has completed the application and it has been submitted, now let's be real here. And in the adult ed programs I work with, I was often helping students fill out driver's license applications, rental applications. I mean, you know, we are talking about in general a disempowered population, and as Julie's story told us earlier, our job is to empower these people in all aspects of their life, not just the HSE. So the reality is that nominally, you know, the letter of the law is that it's the test taker that's making the application. However, the spirit of the law is that we help them do it. So keep in mind what I said is once the application has been approved, ETS Disability Services contacts both test taker and test center with the accommodations. So if you are a test center that is assisting a student with an accommodation, which I would encourage personally, that's a wonderful support network. Once that has been approved, you as the test center can then directly contact ETS Disability Services and ask, what's the status of this accommodation? You also have administrative rights. You can log on to the student's portal and see the listing of the accommodation there as well. So I hope I've answered the question.
Yep, that sounds good to me. All right, so here's another one. Yeah, I've got a couple more. 4 to 6 weeks seems like a very long time to approve an already approved school IEP. Some students are in and out before 5 to 6 weeks. Please explain why it takes so long.
So what I said is that you want to submit as soon as you can apply. I was the special ed coordinator for the last district I worked in. I've had quite a bit of experience with IEPs. I don't want to appear disingenuous, but 4 to 6 weeks was not a long time for processing many IEPs. I recognize that some students, especially when I worked with jails, we had a 30-day limit. That was the most we had with the students. I understand that there are other outside factors that affect timelines. My experience with IEPs was that when they go great, that's wonderful, but most of the time there was some kind of supporting. It was always the issue with my situation was supporting documentation. So I cannot answer why specifically in one case or the other. Remember, there is no boilerplate about why one IEP, or I should say not IEP, by one accommodation might get approved in a couple of days and another one might take a couple of months. Almost always the issue is supporting documentation. For example, if you're requesting accommodation that does not require prior approval, well, it'll only take a couple of days to figure that. It might take, that might be settled in just the phone call to ETS Disability Services. Oh, you want a larger print? We can provide that for you right away. Some accommodations like extended time don't necessarily require as much review. We can just say, well, we've got good, but some accommodations might require extended review and support. They might involve higher, like for instance, if you're going to have another person provide support, then ETS Disability Services at no additional cost to test taker or test center might have to hire someone to be there on test day to provide that additional support, might have to rent or hire extra equipment. These are all things that take time. So the answer to that question is it's a case by case. There is no boilerplate. And my suggestion, you can get lucky. You could have a student roll up on test day, needed accommodation, and have it approved within, Disability Services is highly responsive. If you call them and say, we've got a situation right now, we will work to address it right away. And nominally that can happen. But a more cautious approach is to apply as soon as you're aware. And I said 4 to 6 weeks. That's our recommended. Personally, it was never too soon to establish documentation and to establish approval. So no, I hope I sounded respectful. I tried to answer the question.
Anything else?
Yeah. All right. How will teachers know when the accommodations are approved? Does the student need to be registered before we send in accommodation requests?
Okay, so as I said earlier, once the application has been submitted, ETS Disability Services will contact both the test taker and the teacher as soon as the approval has happened. In addition, that approval status is posted in the student's portal. So as a test administrator, so a student can contact test taker services, can contact disability services. Certainly the student can call the 1-855-MY-HISET number or email them and say, what's the status of my accommodation? And although student test taker services cannot schedule testing, they can certainly report on the status of that student's application. The student can also directly contact disability services and say, hey, what's the status of my application? And that's the better preferred route. You as a test administrator can certainly contact TAS, Test Administration Services. And we always say, if you're not sure, go to TAS first. TAS will be able to look up into the system and say, oh, this is pending disability services approval, and they can say whether it's been approved or not approved. They will not be able to help you register the student, or you can go directly to disability services yourself. So you have two main paths. One is to log on to the student's portal and check the status there. The other is to either contact disability services directly or go through one of your regular channels. If you're a student, test taker services. If you're a test administrator, TAS.
All right, I have one last one. If a student was approved for accommodations on task test, can this make the process for approval on HISET any faster?
So again, it's a case-by-case basis, and there is no boilerplate answer. As the official responses, contact disability services, and they will determine the accommodation. I will speak now as Adam. I have close to 27 years experience in education, processing IEPs and disability. The likelihood of the approval, if you already have pre-approval on another established pathway, is very high. it would take an unusual circumstance for a pre-approved accommodation to somehow not be relevant in another test venue. And now that example comes from my experience with IEPs and disabilities. If you have a student that's approved for instance, extended time on a language arts reading test, when you go to file that application to have that extended time for the math test, you'd have to give a pretty special circumstance why that wouldn't be approved. But again, officially, it's a case-by-case basis. If you have a question about it, contact, you don't even have to have an application in the works. If you go to these two links, and Jerry, I really appreciate that you kept these slides up. You can go to the disability requirements page and the documentation page and take a look at it there. And what should you do if you have a question? Just email Disability Services, says, hey, I have a student who has a pre-approved IEP for this area here. What documentation or what's the likelihood of approval for a HiSET? And you'll get an answer. Thank you for the questions. Are there any more?
No, that covers it. There's just a couple comments and then I think you got the last question with this information. If you have any further questions about accommodations, go ahead and contact ETS Accommodations, and they'll be able to answer all your questions.
I want to be clear. I hope that my tone is respectful and supportive. That's really important to me. And if you do have any questions, please email me. Jerry, if you could put that last slide up. Many of you have my email information. It's aspringwater@ets.org. I'll be happy to send you hot links, clickable links to these sites. And as I mentioned in the beginning, Megan has a PDF of all of the slides that I used, and she'll be happy to distribute them to you. As always, my pleasure to do service in the great state of Indiana. And back to you, Jerry.
Thank you so much, Adam. And we reversed your slides. We put your last slide up front, introducing you with your email and contact information. So and
I can't handle it, Jerry. I can't handle the accommodation. Anyway,
yeah.
Thank you all very much.
There you are. So, well, thank you again, Adam, and thank you to the HiSET team. A lot of good questions this morning. Well, Megan is here this morning, and she has a few additional updates. So, Megan, welcome.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning, everybody. I do have some few updates this morning. The adult education programs will receive a reimbursement for students' test fees, a maximum of $115 for examinees who take the HiSET exam. To qualify, students must currently be enrolled 12 hours in an adult education program and have successful scores all subjects on HiSET printable practice test, $10 each, and may be substituted for and have successful scores on free HiSET practice exams, all subjects September 2017 release, or the free interactive practice test. Successful scores, all subjects on HiSET printable practice test, $10 each, may be substituted for the free practice exams. And I also would like to mention too that Indiana has been advised by HiSET that we are not supposed to pre-fill out students' answer sheets. Also, a reminder that test materials have to be returned by October 30th of 2021. If you do not have those emails, please contact me and I will send you the directions. If your students have not received official documents, or you have not received official documents for your students in a 2-week period, please notify me and I will see what I can do to get those sent out immediately to you. Also, a reminder that students have to take the full battery of tests before they can retake a sub-test. And all official letters have been received or been sent out for you to receive your official documents on behalf of your students. If you had not received an official letter from me, please email me and I will make for sure that I get that letter sent out. That way you can start receiving your documents on behalf of your students. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you so much, Megan. Now let's move away from HiSET and HSE testing to a whole different topic, and Jose is here this morning, Jose Torres, and he's going to talk a little bit about academic and career coaching plus Indiana Career Explorer. Good morning, Jose.
Good morning, Jerry. Thank you, everybody, and good morning. As Jerry said, wanted to talk, have some updates on our Indiana Career Explorer Plus, our career coaching website. First, I want to thank everybody who attended our session at the IAACE conference. We really appreciate it that everyone came. It was a pretty big audience, and again, we do appreciate that. A couple updates with Indiana Career Explorer. Now, an adult education student can register, there is a drop down that says I am an adult education student, I'm an adult seeker. So we want to specifically make sure that our adult education students were being serviced when they registered for the Indiana Career Explorer. Once they do register, you can take the assessments and career exploration. With that, right now we have one assessment, it's an interest assessment that's up. Our aptitude and works values assessment will be out shortly, but we want to make sure that you can at least register. You can start the career exploration piece, and you go ahead and take at least one assessment. With career coaches, that's being built out this week. They will be able to register as a career coach. They'll have a dashboard of their students. I've seen the dashboard, and it'll be a good process for our career coaches and helping them alleviate barriers for our students. So again, with Indiana Career Explorer, Phase 2 is being built out as I speak, as we're going through this, but your students can register. You can do the career exploration piece. You can take one interest assessment right now. And again, if you have any questions, you can either email myself or Pam Warner. Also, we have a Indiana Career Explorer email, which is incehelp@dwd.in.gov. Jerry, did you have a question for me? Okay, I'm sorry about to say. Also, with our career coaching website, that kind of aligns to that. Our career coaching website is up. It has valuable resources there. We have professional development. We have trainings. We have tools there. We've partnered with other agencies as well to offer as many best practices as possible. And doing some research throughout the state, everyone with career coaches, everyone does have their own best practices, and it's kind of siloed. And so what we wanted, and what I wanted as well, is to have a place for all our career coaches to come. There's ample best practices. So again, you can develop your own best practices for your own area. We have economic outputs. We also have for each county, again, because understanding the hiring landscape of your county is key in having realistic talks about career exploration. So along with our career exploration piece and our career coaching page, we do have economic outlooks for each county, which is 92 counties in Indiana. So again, other resources to help our career coaches. We have a webinar series in there as well for career coaches and the self-paced training. So the great thing about this website is, again, while we have this information, it will be updated frequently. We have articles on, again, every aspect of career coaching. And so while in another month there may be different information, different articles, we will have a spot for our archived stuff that we use that we are going to update frequently. And so that's one thing that the career exploration team does want to brag about, is this website. It's very good. It's up, it's live, and we want to make sure all of our career coaches have resources to, again, help them alleviate barriers for our students, and again, just have create their own best practices in their own areas. And so that's it. If you, again, any questions on that, you can email myself, jtorres@dwd.in.gov. We look forward to all questions, and thank you very much.
Jose, do you have the link available?
Yes, I can send the link out. I will send that out to all of our directors. Our career coaches do have the link currently. I've sent that out to them, but I will make sure we have that to everyone by the end of this meeting, as well as the Indiana Career Explorer as well.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Jose, for the updates, and we're looking forward to seeing the full rollout of Indiana Career Explorer. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry.
Well,
thank you, guys.
Changing topics again, we have Donna Lovelady here this morning. She's going to provide information about grants and contracts and introduce a very special guest.
Thank you, Jerry. It was great to see so many of you at the IAACE conference. The directors and fiscal contacts at all of our programs should have received my presentation and notes from the fiscal session. I do ask that you please share that email with your subcontractors so they have all that information too. We have received almost all of the closeouts for PY20. If you have not completed your closeout, you cannot start reimbursing on this year's grant until that happens. As of this morning, all but 7 contracts for adult education and IELCE have been fully executed. If you have received a confirmation email from me, that means you can send in reimbursement requests. And please be sure to use the updated ABE backup form that was sent out on October 8th. As promised at the IAACE, I am working on a fiscal FAQ. I encourage you to send in any questions directly to my email. And now, let us hear from Rob Moore in Bloomington, who is coming to your rescue with tips for reaching a zero balance with your adult ed funds. Take it away, Rob.
Well, thank you, Donna. I appreciate it. Thank you for your presence at the IAAC conference and for your help throughout the year. I'd like to have a talk with everybody a little bit about the budget from an administrator's, educator standpoint. Basically, I'd like to try to help everyone set a goal this year. We have goals for measurable skill gains and high school equivalencies and enrollment and so forth. I'd like us to set a goal this year of getting to a zero balance by June 30th in all of our programs. Zero balance. What does that mean? That means we have claimed and asked for reimbursement for every single dollar that we've been allotted. We don't want to turn any money back and leave it on the table at the state level, because that really just reverts. The state funds go back to the general fund and we may not see it again. So it really doesn't make sense to not claim the money that you've been allotted for your program. So a goal, budget-wise, zero balance by June 30th. And here's a couple of ways that I, over the years, have gotten to a zero balance. In 21 years of adult education administration, I've never left a penny on the table at the state level. And maybe we'll share some ideas for how we can do that. First, I always work with our grants coordinator in our central office, and you might do the same for your organization, to get a budget projection at strategic times during the year. The first time I ask for it is January 1st, or after we come back from Christmas break. That would cover the first half of the year. The second time I do it is around April 1st. That's when we have 3/4 of the year completed. And I ask again 2 more times on January 1st as we're heading toward the June 30th. And then again on June 20th, just 10 days before the cutoff of June 30th. Because on June 30th, you have to have all the money, at least encumbered, that you are going to spend. So that's why we want a kind of a last minute check. So what does that budget projection look like? Can I have the next slide, please? That's gonna be kind of hard to see, but basically, see if your grants coordinator can work with you on a little spreadsheet that would show you the function and object codes in their accounting system that they're using. The descriptions of those accounting codes is it teacher wages, teacher assistants, workbooks, materials, orientation, administrator salaries, benefits, things like that. What the original budget was, and basically the last column, if we were to continue spending at this rate, what would the projected balance be by June 30th? You'll notice, if you can see that clearly, maybe when they send out the slides, you'll see it more clearly. There are some things, here's an example that I'm showing from a previous year, some things that we have in red under projected balance, that means we would be projected to overspend, and some in black, that would be money that we are anticipating not spending. So that's why we want to check to see at strategic times during the year how we're doing. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so what do we do with this money that's projected to be in red and in black? Okay, one thing we could do is through the budget modification process, we can transfer money. Now, we can transfer money within program funds and within administrative funds with no permissions needed. You can do that anytime. You can do it all day long. You can do it every day if you want to, within program and within administration. Okay. So if you see some red there for teacher salaries, you may want to take some money projected to be left over in materials and just transfer it over. Those are all program costs. Okay. So you're going to want to do that to fill those holes that you're projected and not have money left in categories at the end of the year. Now, if we modify the budget to transfer money between program and administration costs, or back and forth between administration and program to administration, there you need to do a budget modification. If you need to do that, you need to check with Donna, get the budget modification worksheet in which you'll show that transfer between program and administrative costs or administrative costs to program. You must be aware that a budget modification like this that transfers money between program and administration or vice versa, they really need to have that done and requested by May 15th of each year, because that's got to go, I'm sure, through DWD fiscal, and that the administration total at the end of your modifications, your administration total must be equal to or less the percentage on your administration waiver. So we can spend up to 5% on administrative costs, but if you need more than that for administration, you request a waiver to do up to 15%. But if your administration costs are going to exceed the 5% that you don't have approved, you've got to do a waiver request, even a new waiver request if you don't have one in place already for the new percentage. Okay, so transferring money is one way that we can make sure we get to a zero balance. May I have the next slide, please? Okay, a third way besides doing a budget projection and transferring money is to go ahead and spend some money on needed items. Okay, just don't leave money hanging there, but think about what we could be using the money wisely on, keeping in mind that you must be using what you buy within the program year and you should receive it by June 30th. Okay, we had an exception for HiSET last year, kind of a blanket exception, but those are some guidelines to think about as we're spending money on needed items. Can we have the next slide, please? What are some of those needed items? Well, we might think about marketing and communications. Marketing and communications is an approved cost that we can incur, and that's under administration. So if you're looking at your enrollments, as we should periodically, are we, in comparing them to last year, do we have less enrollments than what we did in previous years? Here you might want to get some money in marketing communications and do some radio ads, do some flyers. If you have to hire somebody to do this because the time just isn't there, think about that. Maybe a new web page you have to pay for. Anything marketing communications is a good way to spend some money to help your program increase enrollments. Another way to do that was maybe do some additional classes. If you come to January 1st and you think, my gosh, I have projected to have some money left over, where are some needs in your community that we might have some additional classes? Are there some companies that we might reach out to do a WEI or IETs with? Okay. Thirdly, we might think about under needed items, what do I always seem to buy regularly? Okay, not extraordinary costs or unusual costs like maybe additional classes, but what do I always buy regularly? So here's a little experiment for us in this webinar that we maybe not already do. We always kind of take questions from the audience, but let me pose this question to you to answer in chat. So find your chat window there. You can address it to organizers and panelists. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to think about, what do you always seem to buy regularly? And put that in the chat. Let's share some ideas about that. So you got 1 minute, and then Matt can read those to us, okay? 1 minute. What do I always seem to buy regularly? Put it in chat. Go.
Rob, you're going to get charged an additional fund for making me work harder on a statewide call.
Well, good. That's a good way we can spend our money. That'd be an administration cost, right?
Yes. And they're putting it in the questions, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Let's go, people. He's wanting an exercise. This is team building. Nobody's seeing yours. Rob, it's
That's
fine.
okay. You're going to read them.
Get your last 30 seconds. All right, here we have Rob's list, and I'll go through your guys' list. File folders, paper clips, other classroom supplies like that. Tabe seats. Coming in from the field, we have, get to the top of the list, test administrations, copy paper, printer ink, file folders, distance learning platforms, seats, licenses, toner, testing fees, supplies, paper, file folders, pens, paper clips, papers and pencils, laptops, technology, toilet paper, copy paper, TABE assessments, high set practice tests, copy paper, any office supplies, computers, supplies, program materials, books, incentives. Ooh, that's a good one. That one's outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some brainstorming there.
Great. And those are all wonderful ideas. Okay, so things you buy regularly. Okay, I'm not suggesting have a fire sale on June 29th, but let's think about this ahead of time when you get that projected balance that your grants person will tell you, your fiscal person will tell you, and think about those items you always use and just stock up on them. Okay, so there's some ideas for you how we get to a zero balance. That's a goal for all of us this year, June 30th. Zero. Jerry?
Well, thank you very much, Donna and Rob, and particularly Rob for all your tips. Now, in the spirit of transparency, Rob, I have to point this out. Donna did receive your fiscal report for program year 2020. And I realize that you have been giving us a lot of ideas, but it was not a perfect report.
What?
You were 2 cents over your budget.
2 cents
2
over.
cents. 2 cents.
Oh my gosh. Where am I going to get that from? Here, let me look under the cushions and come up with that 2 cents.
Please do, please do. But yes, Rob does do what he has outlined here. He watches and he monitors his budget very closely, and he gets to zero or at least to a rounding error. Correct, Rob?
Rounding error. Now, can I just request an additional allocation for that 2 cents or no?
Jerry will send you the 2 cents out of his own personal fund.
Okay, good.
Good. So you are good. Well, thank you very much. Very informative. Very informative. Well, let's move on to professional development. Roy is here this morning to provide some updates. Good morning, Roy.
Good morning. Thank you, Jerry. I hope everybody is doing well. It was nice seeing everyone at the IAACE. We had a great time, but I guess it's back to reality now. So here we go. I'm going to talk about some of the mid-year incentives. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, there will be 2 mid-year incentives for achieving performance outcomes for PY 2021 through 2022. Grantees or subrecipients will receive a mid-year performance incentive for achieving 55% RNRS Table 4, Column J by December 31st of this year. Next slide, please. The second mid-year incentive is for enrollments. Grantees will receive a mid-year performance incentive for equaling highest enrollment number of either 12/31/2019 or 12/31/2020. Next slide, please. New grantee programs from PY 2020 will receive a mid-year performance incentive for equaling enrollment number at the end of last fiscal year. Next slide, please. So now we'll talk a little bit about the professional development, the first quarterly reports. And we're going to start off talking about some of the successes. Next slide, please. Before we share some local program successes, we would like to begin with this quote by Grant Cardone. Success provides confidence, security, a sense of well-being, the ability to contribute at a greater level, hope, and leadership. Next slide, please. First thing we look, so this one is from the Literacy Alliance. So they talked about how they monitored attendance closely, post-testing closely, and then they also use targeted test instruction prior to what they call TABE Week. In addition, students who do not make an initial MSG in one area receive instruction in specific areas outlined on the table results before they post-test again. Currently, their table 4 is at 62%. Really good job. Next slide, please. The next one comes from Jennings County. Some of the challenges they had were staff shortages, new staff, including a new director, the ongoing pandemic, of course, and transitioning to HiSET. They were able to take all this in stride and be able to continue providing high quality instruction. Next slide, please. At Blue River, they found that utilizing the readiness assessments and the state funding allows students an affordable scholarship opportunity that is not monetarily connected to their fear of attempting the HiSET test. Next slide, please. At Crawfordsville, their current enrollment is near 45% increase of what they did in 2020, with a large percent of their students accessing online courses since they began this year. Their current measurable skill gains are at 70, I believe that's 70%. I don't think it should be 7%. Over 2020 at 41%. Next slide, please. Now we go to the Learn More Center. They encourage their students to do a hybrid program. We see those doing homework / distance learning and in-center programming are experiencing the most success. So doing hybrid, they are seeing a lot of success with that as well. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about some of the barriers that we have experienced. Even though barriers may have a negative connotation, this quote by Napoleon Hill draws out the positives that are created by walls that hinder us. Strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle. Next slide, please. One of the struggles that we had at Newcastle Community Schools is that their program changed locations at the last minute and had to completely start fresh our programming year within students. We had to shut down for several weeks, but we are making up our enrollments and almost all of our students return upon reopening. Next slide, please. Some of the challenges at Fort Wayne Community Schools, they had staff changes, dealing with the pandemic. Then we also have the normal lifestyle issues and dealing with when students get employment or working around their schedules, immigration issues, the need to educate what is expected for learning and growth, an example, paid work versus schoolwork. So it's hard to kind of pull people away from their jobs. And I know all of you kind of experienced that. And then also getting students connected with and utilizing technology and computers from home, not just having a cell phone or a computer that's connected to internet, but something you can actually get some work done with. Next slide, please. At Muncie Community Schools, their adult education program runs on the local school calendar, so they are about 6 weeks behind. Also, their student population is coming in at lower levels, so it's taking them a little bit longer to do post-testing. So we hope that they keep trying hard down there. Next slide, please. One challenges faced by John Jay Center. Nearly 35% of households in John and Jay County lack internet access, making it difficult to impossible to work online. We see a trend of students not attending class on a regular basis, which makes it difficult to supplement their class time with distance learning via online packets. Getting students to reach the minimum number of hours so that they are to be put online and have that time count has proven difficult as well. So those are some of the challenges that they have been facing. Last, we will share some best practices programs have implemented. Thus far this year, I believe this quote from John Goff exemplifies the degree to which our programs attempt to break down barriers that may obstruct the progress of our students. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. Next slide, please. So here, they were able to boost their CNA IET by running co-teaching model with 2 instructors simultaneously teaching to support ELLs. We would like to try this successful model with more IET classroom instruction, and that is done at Warren Township. Great job. Next slide, please. At Vigo, they present homework, the distance learning during the first day of class when they are talking about expectations. They say, quote, if we inform the students upfront that homework is expected each week, we will be more likely to succeed in getting homework. Great job. Next slide, please. So we began our yearly PD in August with 3 mornings of staff development. We issued a survey to teachers to complete for the PDF team with questions designed to help us learn where the gaps of understanding were for our teachers. This information guided us as we met with individual teachers so that we could answer their specific questions. We were impressed with the details that they added in learning about their own personal goals. Next slide, please. So I guess I'll introduce myself. Roy is here with for a few moments to speak about workforce education. All right, next slide, please. So we do have essential soft skills training going on right now throughout the month of October. We are doing regional trainings, and there go the times right there. As you can see, the website there, if you scroll down, you will be able to see all the trainings that you see here. And we do have them split up regionally, but if you want to attend a different region that maybe the time works better for you, that is fine. They're real small groups, so you're able to get a lot of your questions answered. So I strongly encourage everyone to register and attend. The next one we have coming up is October 15th. There's one at 9 in the morning and one at 1 in the afternoon. And at all times are in Eastern Standard Time. Next slide, please. So now I just want to cover some of what I discussed in the at the conference. If you were unable to attend, and I believe in my session we had issues with the virtual portion of it. So I just want to discuss briefly about some of the things that I talked about. I went over the definition of workforce education initiative, and as we know, that is an educational relationship between adult education and local employers to help retain jobs, improve performance, and advance or give promotions. These relationships need to result in measurable benefits for your students. There also must be employer buy-in. They need to be active participants in that relationship. Next slide, please. And so we are already kind of familiar with I guess I call them the traditional measurable skill gains that we could get pre and post testing, high school credential, and then further training after exit. But we do have 3 new ones. Next slide, please. The post-secondary transcript or report card, skills progression, and the progress milestones. Now, if you wanted to use one of these, next slide, please, you will have, that's when you will fill out this 3rd tab on the Excel application. For all other classes, courses, IATs, or WIs, you just need to fill out those first 2 tabs. But if you want to make use of one of the new measurable skill gains, you will have to fill out the 3rd tab. And there is where you kind of lay out if you're going to do progress milestone or the skills progression or the report card. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, the skills progression is basically the for IETs, it is the certification. When you are doing a WI, it can be a trade-related benchmark, like a knowledge-based exam, and that's coming directly from Octave. So let's look at a couple examples of those. Next slide, please. So like I said, for IATs, these will be industry-recognized certifications, and this will automatically be counted when you have a course and interest that's marked as an IAT. Once you put in their certification, it will already count it as a measurable skill gain. If you're going to use this for WIs, then you have to work with me, and we kind of have to negotiate what the skills progression is, and I will mark that in the enter system. And then once they get it, you will be able to enter in that information and get their measurable skill gain that way. So let's look at an example of that. Next slide, please. If you remember, Marion Community Schools, they are partnering with the U.S. Army Recruiter, and traditionally, so they're getting their I guess, new employees, because they haven't been hired by the Army yet, but they have to take the ASVAB. Well, traditionally, we wouldn't give a measurable skill gain for somebody passing the ASVAB, but now we have the we're able to do that now. So in this case, we are using the ASVAB as the skills progression because it is an employer-related benchmark in this case. Next slide, please. Also, we have Majestic Care is working with Jennings County Adult Education. Thank you, Brent. And in this case, they already have CNAs working there, but they need them to get the Qualified Medical Assistant certification. And so they are working with them to do that. And the employer buy-in in this case is that they're going to be hosting clinicals, they're going to offer raises. They also have a workspace there, study room, and all that kind of employer buy-in. And so in this case, we're letting the skills progression be the QMA certification. It is an employer-related benchmark, and this is how they wanted to use it in this case. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the progress milestone, and this one is only for WEIs. This is the one you have the most flexibility with, and this is the one that we kind of negotiate and go back and forth about. So you will have to, the documentation for this will vary depending on what is agreed upon between you, myself, and the employer or the training provider. It needs to be employer driven. And then you will have to include a course curriculum if you are using this measurable skill gain. So let's go to the next slide, please. So here we have one program that is using it right now is Washington Township. They partnered with Heartland Food Products. They initially began this relationship by doing just ELL courses there on their property. And then they became more involved with the plant, and the Heartland decided they wanted to integrate more of the signage, more of the vocabulary into the curriculum. And so they create an assessment with Washington Township that would measure, that would assess if their students were understanding what they were seeing. They use actual signage from the plant, they use pictures from the plant, they incorporated vocabulary. And once they passed this assessment, Heartland said that they will get certain incentives. This is an important milestone for them, and we're going to document it based off the Burlington English. They have to pass certain levels in Burlington English, and then the capstone basically, or the progress milestone for that would be the novel assessment that they created with Heartland. So this one gives you the most flexibility. You do have to document a little bit carefully so that I can understand what's going on, but it does give you the most flexibility to get measurable skill gains where we previously couldn't get them. Next slide, please. And as always, if you have any questions, please send me an email, give me a call. If you have any ideas for WIs that you want to do or IETs that you want to do, give me a call. We can talk them over before you start doing any of the paperwork, and it can save you a lot of time. Speaking of that, our next speaker, Alfonso, we actually had a great conversation yesterday, and we did the same thing. He had a few ideas for WIs and IETs, and we covered that. So thank you, everyone. Again, if you have questions, comments, give me a call, give me an email, and we can talk about it. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Roy. We do have a special guest this morning, as Roy indicated, is Afonso, and he has some information and some ideas about ensuring that we get to a zero balance and how we can better share our resources, particularly as they apply to IETs and WEIs. Welcome, Afonso.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, Roy and I had a great conversation yesterday, and hopefully it saved a lot of busy work by talking things out first before we actually put pen to paper. So if you have any questions, that's my contact information. But I want to talk about sharing IET and WEI resources. It kind of came about at the conference a couple weeks ago. Ended up talking to Jerry and Roy. And as Rob mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that all state and federal funds are expended so that we can reach that zero budget at the end of the year. So this is one way that we can do it, by using your own program's funds and possibly send one of your students to another program's IET, approved IET or WEI. And also, most importantly, other than the funds, is that we're gonna, by working together, we'll be able to offer more for our students, which is what's most important. Next slide. So how? Well, the key is partnerships between the adult ed programs. So as far as the state, we'll kind of cover a little bit on what's a couple scenarios and more or less how they would look. The details on exactly how you're going to work with another adult ed program, whether it be 2, 3, 4 adult ed programs doing the same thing, that's between you guys. As far as exchanging the funds, that's between you guys, but make sure there's an MOU or agreement that is created to make sure all those details and responsibilities are set before you actually, move forward and do this. So why? Which, Matt, click on the little slide. There we go. So again, more opportunities. Why do we want to do this? More opportunities and successes for our students. It will save on IET and WI approvals if you're working with other partners, which obviously we're going to have better partnerships between adult ed providers. Hopefully we can have training classes at full capacity. Helps us spend down the federal funds and state funds, and overall it's going to create a more positive impact on the workforce. So, okay, let's go into the first scenario. And all these right now, they're kind of made up scenarios, and I use the names of different programs just as an example. So in this case, I use Broadview. So Rob, sorry that I'm using you, but you're not the only one that I use today. So in this scenario, basically, if I have a student that wants to pursue an HVAC certification, I know Rob has one. They do virtually. I do not have it approved at the moment, but the class is about to start. Well, basically what I can do is fund that student and take care of the cost for Rob and send my student over there after he's been enrolled. The student has to be enrolled with us first, just so we can use those adult ed funds. Do the pre-test, get the 12 hours, and then they can go over and do the HVAC certification with Rob. Once I pass it on over, they're basically more of a contractor at that point, and they take care of the student completely. It's then Rob's student. And basically I just pay him for the cost. Okay, I will not, in this scenario, since I don't have it approved, I will not get the gain for the IET or the certification or WI. It won't count towards me. We can use each other's tape test though. So Rob can use my pre-test, and if he happens to post-test, I can use that as my gain. And I'm sure there's going to be some questions in regards to some of this, and we'll answer them as they come. But this is more of a quick, again, you don't have an IET approved or a WI approved, someone else does, and we just want to help the student out, send them that way. We can use our funds to send them to that other program. One thing about on the taping, I just want to make sure. Yes, actually that's not what I meant. It's more, when would I use this? More than likely, other than just the need of a student. HSC grads, those are probably a great example. They're done with the HSC with you. You already have that gain. You might as well send them over to another program and help them continue their education and betterment of themselves. Next scenario. Okay. In this scenario, this is probably going to be the more common one, in my opinion, and probably one of the easier ones where both programs are really sharing that IET or WI. It's basically, and I'm using Judy in this one from Marion, we would fill up the NCCER core IET or WI together. So in this example, Marion's the one doing the course, they're hosting it, and we have 7 students that are interested in the class. She has 13. Basically, we get together, iron out all the details in the MOU and the agreement. We also make sure that we both use the same IT application and send it to Roy and let him know that basically we're doing this, we're partnering, it's the exact same course, there's nothing different, but you're each going to have your own course name on enters, which is kind of where we really start getting a little bit more complicated. And they want to make sure that both classes are on there and approved, one for each program. And then at this point, in this scenario, since Mary's hosting the class, she'll be the contractor for us, including the adult ed portion. So basically, I send my student over that way. She'll take care of my 7 students. They have their 13 students. I can pay them from the adult ed grant funds. But the students are not co-enrolled. So that's going to be the difference between this scenario and the next one. In this scenario, basically they have their attendance that goes onto their course under their enters, and our students go into our attendance and enters under our course. At the end of this program, they get their gains, their completions, their ITs, we get ours, but we help fund that class and pay for all the costs as well. So we're sharing resources, and it can be done the other way around, where she offered the class in the fall, and then five miles away we offer it in the spring, and then she sends our students over, or her students over to mine, and we do the same thing again. And this one kind of hits home a little bit more because we've had classes at the same time 5 miles away from each other, and neither class was full, and they were running pretty much at the same time, and that was frustrating for both of us from some of the conversations Judy and I have had in the past. So yeah, this one kind of hits home. A little simpler, and my guess probably one of the more common and easier ones to do, where everybody's getting credit. Now, next scenario. This one would be the most complicated out of all of them. Basically, we end up co-enrolling. And I'm using the CDA and Polly from Hines as an example here. Now, same thing that basically we're going to get with Roy. We're going to get the same IET application approved, make sure it's all connected in enters. And in this case, there are some virtual pieces. So we can take care of maybe the workforce training piece of it online, and then Polly will host the adult ed portion of the class. Okay. Now the trick here is that when they're doing the workforce, that's our attendance, and we put that in under our attendance under that enters approved enters course. When the students are with Polly and Hines doing the adult ed, she counts that attendance. We cannot, and they'll be on the next slide, but we cannot use the same attendance for both programs. So in a way, that's almost like double dipping on the attendance, and we cannot do that. But as long as they have their attendance under their IET course name or WI course name, and we have our attendance under ours, and they're separate attendances, you know what I mean? That's where, again, this one's a little bit more complicated. But if you have separate attendance onto your own enters courses, that's how you both end up getting with the gains, with the IETs, the WIs. And to just be a little bit more clear, there's the example. So Monday and Tuesday, the workforce trainings are with us, and we count that attendance. And on Thursdays is the adult ed contextualized instruction, and Hines counts that attendance. So again, there's a little bit more discussions on that and exactly how that's going to work. You got to be very clear on the MOU, and you got to be very clear with Roy on how it's going to work to make sure everything's kosher. But those are 3 scenarios that we can use. Now on the last slide, again, detail, make sure for the policies that we don't count the same attendance. But I'll leave it up for questions.
Okay, we had one question, and I'm going to clarify. I went ahead and typed it up. But why can't both programs get credit for the IET certification? Here's why. Per federal guidelines, you have to have an approved IET that gets a certification, or you have to have an approved WEI that has the 3 outcomes, one of the 3 outcomes to count as an MSG. If you do not have an approved IET at your program, a student can earn 1,000 certifications and they will never count as an MSG for you because you do not have an approved IET. You have to have the approved IET at your program to get that MSG. I hope that clears that portion of that up. The other scenarios that he mentioned, we did have a very long conversation with how it would work in inters, and the bottom line is what it says right there. You can't duplicate the attendance for the students. You've got to make sure that if you have 20 students in a class, one program gets 10, the other program gets the other 10, or however you wish to divide it up as the partnering programs. But you can't count the attendance on the same day and pay the teacher with it's State Board of Accounts gets involved at that point. So I hope there's no further questions on that, but that's the reasoning why you can't get credit for someone else's IET program.
Very good. Well, thank you, Afonso, and thank you, Matt, for the clarification. Great information, and please connect with Roy, and we'll get these slides out as soon as possible so that you can more fully look at some of the scenarios that Afonso posted. So thank you, Afonso.
And Rob had a question on here. Basically, could we use an already approved IET? And yes, if it's already approved, we can go ahead and resubmit that with both programs with Roy. And if anyone has any questions on the scenarios, it could open up a lot of questions, so I kind of went through it fairly quickly, but you can contact me as well if you have questions.
Please do. Please do.
Also, there was a very positive comment from Todd. He said, that's good partnering, and bottom line, what is best for the students? Good job.
What is best for the student? Great job. Yes, what is best for the student? Ensuring that particularly maybe some smaller programs that don't have all the resources and all the trainings available, being able to partner with another adult ed program to ensure that the training is taking place. And again, going back to Todd's comment, what is best for the student? So thank you all. Thank you very much. As we wind down this morning, just a couple quick slides. If we go to the next slide, Bryn, I want to look at some trends as far as this program year is concerned. We compared program year 2021 to program year 2020, looking at the same month and day. And as you see, we used October 8th, 2021 and October 8th, 2020. Indiana's total enrollment is up by about 1,000 students from the same time a year ago. Our measurable skill gains are up by 1.5 percentage points. Our HSCs, however, are down about 40 from the same time a year ago, and that may be due just simply because we have switched tests sort of at the beginning of the program year. So I will assume that the pick up as well as we get further into the program year and as more and more HiSET tests are given. Next screen, Bryn. And finally, Indiana submitted its program year 2020 data to the U.S. Department of Education on October 1st. I'd like to thank Bryn, Matt, Scott, everyone on the Enters team for their assistance. And these are our final numbers. Enrollment for 2020 was 17,541. This was an 18% drop from program year 2020. Measurable skill gains for program year 2020 were at a record high of 70.1%. HSEs were up as well by nearly 600 diplomas, and IET enrollments held steady. And to say the least, the pandemic was challenging, but I'm sure we will remain as a state a very high performing state when we receive all the national results for program year 2020 sometime after the first of the year, and we will be happy to share those results with you. Really, from all of us, thank you for your hard work. Marilyn, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you so much. These numbers are actually incredible. I know that the decrease in enrollment was a challenge for all of us. It does seem, though, that based on the numbers that we're seeing for our first quarter, that we're starting to right that ship. So again, I just want to say congratulations and thank you so much for your hard work. A 70 honestly brings tears to my eyes. And as I was approving these in the national database, I was just so excited. I cannot wait to see how we take what we learned last year and apply it in future years. I think the future in Indiana for adult education is very, very bright. Thanks all.
Agreed. And since I am the old man of adult education, I can say our state has never in adult education come close to 70%, and you all did it in spite of very challenging circumstances with the pandemic. So from our team to your teams, thank you so very much. Well, good morning, Matt. We hear from you again. I know you have some enters updates, and one of the questions that I have for you, Matt, is when can we begin entering HiSET scores?
Funny you should ask, Jerry. That was going to be the first thing I was going to talk about. Okay, so at this time, there is no place it enters to enter the HiSET scores. So you need to get this information, if you're a director, down to your data entry people. All of the information that you get out of this needs to go down and be disseminated. But at this time, there is no way to enter HiSET scores. However, we are working on it. Megan, Jerry, and I, and the programmer, or Megan, Jerry, and I, and HiSET had a meeting with their data people, and here's what's going to happen, and this is really exciting. Okay, so you all know that Diploma Center sends us a file for the old HSEs and tasks and GEDs and all of that for every student in Indiana, and you never knew exactly who was going to be in the file. You had the records and could manually input the stuff into Enters before we would maybe even get the scores electronically. We might get them a month later. So the data match for the HSE was never great. I mean, it was there, but you never used it. We are going to partner with HiSET. They are still sending a file to Diploma Center, but we are going to get it directly from HiSET as they score them. So if you have a student who takes the test today, you may see that score in Enters electronically put in, data matched off of the ETS number that they get, their student number from ETS when they register, data matched into Enters the moment that they pass or the very next day. So A, it's going to be quicker. B, it will match everything that you see in the dashboard for HiSET. It will also help you guys when we recode into Enters. We're going to add in a field for the student's ETS number, so you don't have to go looking for it or ask them for it when and if you help them register, which most of you are probably going to help them register. Just go ahead and put that into the student record and Enters, and then you always have that to be able to look up their scores as a test center. So we are getting that stuff. Steve and I have to have a meeting with their data people on exactly what needs to come over and what we actually need. But that's going to happen. Like, that's not I've already got the green light from everybody at ETS or HiSET and DWD. So we're going to do that, and you will get that stuff way quicker than Diploma Center. Trust me, that file had people from like 1985. Oh, hey, we've got a new one. Yes, Marilyn?
Hi. I know that you guys are diligently working on all of this, but can you give us an ETA on when we might see this? Are we looking at something that might not take place until after the first of the year, or is this something that providers could start seeing in the next few weeks?
It should be in the next few weeks. As soon as we have the actual meeting of what data we need to get, then he can code it and then it'll be in. So it's not something that's going to take months. He's already aware that he has to reprogram to add the HiSET scores in.
So the
In-
providers will get notified once that happens, but they can
Yes.
look for it in the next few weeks. That's perfect. Thank
Yes.
you.
No problem. Also, in regards to that, the current task thing that's there now, you cannot enter HSE scores into it. It's all coded for task. It has nothing to do with the HiSET. If you want to show that your student passed an HSE for HiSET and get credit on it right now for the mid-year incentive for the end of the year, or get it on your table 4, you have to go to the achievements tab and mark the date that they achieved the diploma. Take that hard copy or whatever, put with the student record, and then when you're able to enter the scores, or when we data match, those scores will automatically go in. But as long as you have record that they did pass, it does count on table 4 with just the achieved. The scores were more for you all to show that you got the scores, and as a record keeping tool. You're not allowed to mark the pass or fail. It's all calculated in the background, which is going to be the same with the HiSET. Theirs is a little different. So there's 5 subjects, and they have to get a score of 8 or higher on all of those subjects. But to pass the HiSET, they have to get a 45, a cumulative score of 45 or higher. So they have to make up points in there. So inters will auto-calculate all of that for a pass, right? So it should save you all some time, in theory, and it will be more timely than what we got from Diploma Center. So we won't have to deal with that. We'll still be getting that file from Diploma Center, but we're going to get live data from HiSET either daily or weekly, depending on how we set it up. So that's that. As far as any other things in inters, all right, so back to usernames and or passwords. So we've gone through a lot of security stuff. There's been a lot of changes and people have had issues with logging in and can't get logged in. If you have changed your password because it said you need to change your password must be at least 8 characters long, contain 1 uppercase letter, contain at least 1 number, and at least 1 special character, and then not the characters that it says on the little thing. And I think now they've actually coded it to where if you don't put a proper password in, it tells you and then it pops up and says exactly what I just said. But your special characters are 1 through 10, holding the shift key down on your keyboard. Those are the special characters that are allowed. So all passwords have to have that requirement. Again, teacher accounts cannot be first initial last name. If you create a teacher account that is first initial last name, you're going to create problems. Users only need 1 account. If you're a data person and you have a data account that I have created for you and sent you the information, you do not then need a teacher account because you're a teacher and have to do attendance. Your data account has access to every single student, teacher, course at your AE program. You were given that data account to assist with all data. You don't need to further give yourself a teacher account to be able to just put your attendance and tests in. You can do that with your data account. Vice versa, if you are a teacher and then they ask you to do extra data stuff, your director or supervisor will have to request that of me. You as a local individual cannot create a data account. Teachers can only see their students in their courses. So that's how that's set up. And that's all for security as well. One last thing to mention, there were several reports that were removed due to UI and PPI information, and you will never see them again. So sorry, but there were some security things and questions. Like all of this has been an ongoing DWD thing with security. So other than that, sorry, I did not see you at IAACE. Hopefully next year. Marilyn, you got something else?
So I was just going to say, so there is a whole team at DWD that is working on data sharing agreements and data governance for the agency as a whole. So much of what Matt is discussing is coming about as a result of the work that's being done a lot higher up. This has really nothing specifically to do with adult education, just trying to make sure that our data systems are secure and that we're only sharing information that we should be sharing and only sharing that information with the parties that should be receiving it. Let me know if you have any questions.
Jerry, that's all I have. And actually, there aren't any questions yet. So we can just do Jen and you can end us.
Very good. Well, Jen, you've been waiting patiently. You did a great conference that we had in Michigan City last week. So Jen is here this morning with IAACE updates and conference wrap-ups. Good morning, Jen.
Good morning, Jerry. Thank you very much. You know, whenever we wrap up the conference, you think that we're wrapping it up and it's all done. But as soon as we do wrap up the conference, the next year starts planning. So first, I just want to thank all of our sponsors. They're all listed below, and I know the print is sort of small, but they know who they are, and you know they are by checking the conference program and revisiting the virtual platform to check out their booths. I also want to thank Jerry, Marilyn, and all the adult ed team. You led some great sessions. You have assisted in so many ways, and you know what those ways are. Thank you very much. I also want to thank the attendees, not only the attendees in person, but the attendees virtual. Your patience and your diligence to open your minds to get more out of the conference than just stuff for your career. You got stuff out of the conference for you. The keynotes alone did that. So thanks for paying attention for that development for real life. I want to remind you that all ticket holders have access to the virtual.iaace.com platform, and we are working on reviewing all the recordings and completing all the steps to get them uploaded so that all ticket holders will be able to watch anything on demand that was hybrid. And we are also working on some extra stuff. We have some presenters that are willing to do some recordings of their presentations so that we can put that in the platform as well. We have also added all of the Virtual Institute stuff to all conference ticket holders. So there is some stuff in there for everyone for on demand from the Virtual Institute. So if you want to check that out, I suggest you go ahead and utilize your email and your password that you created. And if for some reason you do not have access, if there's some link that you did not click or something that did not happen correctly, then send me a quick email or a quick chat and we'll get it corrected. One of my favorite parts of the conference is the award ceremony. The award program is near and dear to a lot of you, I know. And I want to encourage you to not only listen as I review the next, but perhaps maybe make some notes and jot some names down. And perhaps you want to send them a quick email with a congratulations. You can find all of the winners in your membership directory on the IAACE.com. So next up, first, I'll congratulate all of the retirees. I know some of your dates have already passed and you're long gone, but then there are some with the dates up ahead. So just know that we wish the best for you in your future endeavors and hope they are very blessed. Next, the outstanding volunteer went to Amy Berube. I hope I said that name correctly. She is from the Center of Workforce Innovations. You can review all of this information on the IAACE.com website /2021 awards and utilize the search key at the top if you want to review and read each one of these slides. The Business Partner of the Year went to Boston Scientific. The Outstanding Paraprofessional went to Cindy Gofords. The Outstanding New Adult Educator went to Maverick Wagley. The Outstanding Adult Educator went to Mary Lynn Manning from BFW Adult Education. The Outstanding Administrator went to Adrienne Carroll with the NEO. The TCU Service Award went to Greg Jones. The Outstanding Adult Learner of the Year went to Rita Gogol, who made the trip all the way from Southern Indiana. And as you can read in the comments, she is now 88 years young. Quite the accomplishment, and she was a joy to meet. And last but not least, the Janet R. Craddock Award went to Ted Pearson. So make a note, send your congratulations note to each of them because they deserve the recognition, as all of the nominees do. And that's when I want you to go ahead and start to think about making notes for yourself for next year's nomination process. If you keep records all year long of who you may want to nominate, then the nomination may not seem so difficult whenever it comes to the time. And you've heard it here second or third, perhaps, the 2022 conference. Yes, it's September 28th, 29th, and 30th. We're going back down south to Belterra Casino Resort. So save the date for the 2022 conference. And next up, and I can invite Rob to come back on the screen if he would like, because this is his baby. This is the advocacy committee's contest that they arranged and organized. All of the information is on IAACE.com/essay contest, including the ability to submit your essays. Rob, do you have anything to add about the essay contest?
This is a really important activity we need every program to participate in, because this is one way that we're going to educate our decision makers about what we do in adult education and what we use the funds for. And we actually have 2 legislators who will be serving as judges, maybe hopefully get some more, but I know we have 2, so it'll be 2 legislators. Hope I don't have to say any more about that. You can read between the lines there. So very, very important that you participate as a consortium and get your students involved. Thank you very much. I'll be looking for them. I'll know if you participated.
He absolutely will, because all of the submissions will go to Rob. Yay! Just kidding. They will go to all of the committee that is making the decisions and all of that. And just know there is going to be some prizes, so you can entice your adult learners by letting them know that the recognition is real. And last but not least, I'm always recruiting blogs and newsletter articles on your news, and this month's newsletter is, if you can get it into me by October 20th, we can make sure that we get them in there for you. And that's all I've got. Thanks again, Jerry.
Jen, I do have a question for you.
Oh, okay, great.
Amy Wood wants to know, will we get complete recordings of the sessions we ended up not being able to see?
Well, I believe I said it. Did I not? Did I skip over my notes? I'm like going, did I read right over that? We are working on reviewing all of the recordings. There's a lot of them. And anything that we can re-record, we will certainly try if it's not feasible to put it up. But we are working on reviewing all of them. It's a process to get them all uploaded and get the platform changed so that you can actually watch them on demand. And as soon as that is all done, we will announce via email and on the website. So just stay tuned and stay patient.
Thank you very much, Jen. I really do, on behalf of adult education, the board of directors, thank you for everything that you did to make the conference a success. Thank you. And Rob, I also appreciate you putting in your 2 cents there. So please join us for our next webinar on November 10th. We will email, as we always do, a registration link as we get closer to the date. Please have a great afternoon. Thank you very much.